Good morning. My name is not important for what we're going to talk about this morning. I'd rather talk to you about who I am and what I believe. I'm a 46-year-old man, and I'm a member of a faith community that you may have heard about at some point in your lives. In the early days of our faith, it was known as the work or the priesthood. The faith community that I belong in was actually founded by my great-grandparents. They were some of the founders of this faith. And over time, it has come to be known by other names, commonly known now as the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or FLDS. In the early days, our faith was founded as a result of things that happened within the Mormon Church, the church that you know as the Mormon Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And what happened in the last part of the 1800s is that church, the Mormon Church, decided to renounce certain parts of our religion that we held dear, that are in part and parcel of our faith. And they did that church did that in order that the state of Utah could become a state of the United States. It was a condition placed upon the state, upon the politicians in that state, to renounce this part of our faith that we hold dear that I want to talk to you about today. And they did that for the sole reason so that Utah could become a state. And part of the reason why we are now known, our community is known as the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is because we do hold that fundamental belief that is important to us dear, even today. My great-grandparents grew up in the Salt Lake City area, and then in the middle part of last century, the 1900s, my parents were some of the first persons of our faith community to go found a community in the southern part of Utah, in the northern part of Arizona, known as Short Creek. Two towns that are known as Hilldale, Utah, on the north side, and that is the part of Short Creek into which my parents moved. Now, what is this principle that I want to talk to you about today that led the church that we once belonged to that renounced that belief so that they could become a state? That is the law that we know to be God's law, which is the celestial law of plural marriage. The reason why my parents left the Salt Lake City area and founded this area called Short Creek in a very remote area of Utah and Arizona was so that we could live this principle in peace. Our faith community could practice our faith in peace as a peaceful people. And despite anything you may have heard or something that some lawyer may talk to you about what's in a book, I'm here to tell you that we are a peaceful people. So what is our faith? What do we believe in? Well, like many of you, we believe in the Old and New Testament. We believe in the Book of Mormon, which is part of the founding principles of our faith, as founded by the original prophet of our faith, Joseph Smith. We believe in other sacred texts, such as one called the Doctrines and Covenants, which is a collection of the revelations that have been given to our prophets over the years and have been put in print so that we know the revelations that we've been privy to. And a very important thing you have to understand about our faith. The prophet holds a very significant role within our faith because it is the prophet and the prophet alone to whom God, the one mighty and strong, speaks. The Almighty speaks to our prophet, and then our prophet has the ability to then tell us through revelation what the Almighty has instructed for us. So our faith community, originally founded by Joseph Smith, we hold steady and true to the beliefs that were part and parcel of our religion. The Short Creek community was founded in 1953. State authorities from Arizona raided our community, tried to impose man's law upon our community, took our children out of their homes, took them to courts where we were not represented, separated mothers from their children, and thankfully, as a result of this action by state authorities, people were so outraged at the pictures of mothers crying, children crying, that eventually the state authorities backed down and we were able to go on and live in our community in the peaceful way that we intended. When I was growing up, the prophet that was placed with us when I was growing up was a person by the name of Rulin Jeffs. And Uncle Rulin, as many of us grew to know him in the community, took care of us. And at some point in time, Uncle Rulin decided that it would be better for all of us to really concentrate and focus in the Short Creek area. We still had people of our faith community living in Salt Lake City, but by and large, most of us were living in Short Creek and could practice our faith there. Uncle Rulin got older, became ill, and even though Uncle Rulin was ill, he was still able to have the word of the Almighty passed to us through his son, Warren Jeffs. And Uncle Warren, as he came to be known, would speak for his father and would be able to talk to his father, receive the word of the Almighty, and pass it down to us. And one of the things that was passed to us during this time was that, as a matter of revelation, that there was a need to go out and establish in other parts of the country what Uncle Warren told us would be places of refuge. And so, as we were being told about these places of refuge, I'm going to show you a portion of a document. This is actually a record that is maintained by the prophet at the time. At this time, this was the record of President Warren Jeffs. This was after Uncle Rulin had passed. And the prophet maintains a daily record of everything that goes on in our community, and does that because we're taught that everything that happens on earth must be recorded and match records that are maintained in heaven. And if things are not documented in this way, then persons will not be given credit for what happens on heaven, what happens on earth. And so here, on December 24, 2003, the prophet gave us a revelation that as mine elect are gathered to these places of refuge by the revelations of my will, as I shall appoint through my servant Warren Jeffs, let the first presidency of my church travel among my scattered people as I shall appoint, and encourage and teach and bless my faithful ones, that they may be better qualified to dwell in my presence on these places of refuge, and be led by me and the holy angels from these places of refuge to the center stake of Zion, and perform the work of the fullness of Zion, fullness and redemption of Zion in that place. And so we were taught, as part of our faith, that only those who would qualify would be allowed to be at these places of refuge. And through your faith and continued humility and seeking unto me with all diligence, shall I put a cloud of protection over my people who are in these places of refuge, wherein the wicked shall not be able to enter, that you, my people, may have experience in seeking unto me, the Lord thy God, for the blessings of heaven to descend upon you in houses, lands, food, clothing, and the blessings of life, and so forth. And so I'm here to tell you that the day that I was told that I would be allowed to leave Short Creek and go to a place of refuge that was described to me as being the place of Zion on earth, in a state I'd never gone to, the state of Texas, it's one of the most proud days of my life. I was told that given the secrecy associated with the places of refuge, that I would not be able to even tell my family members there in Short Creek. And by this time, as you may know, being as a person who lives and walks this faith, I had the privilege of having been assigned to me 5 sweet ladies that had been placed by me in the principle and the doctrine of the celestial law of plural marriage. And they had been placed with me because I had been deemed worthy, that I would have the capacity to exalt them and to take them with me one day into the highest level of the celestial kingdom. So what I was told was that what went on at these places of refuge was secret, and I could not even tell these sweet ladies that had been placed by me, as well as my children, where I was going. I had to keep that secret. Now, it did make me very proud that the prophet did tell me that I could bring my 15-year-old son with me. And I was proud of all my children, but I was very proud of my 15-year-old son, in part because I'd been teaching him the trade that I have. And I am a carpenter by trade. My father taught me the trade just like his father had taught him. And I have been honored with the gifts of being able to do things with my hands and build things. And so I was told that I would be going down to Texas, that I could bring my 15-year-old son with me, and that we were going to work to build for the redemption of Zion at this place in Texas. So what I'd like to do is take you to that place. I'm telling you, I don't know if any of you all are familiar with this area. I think at least one of you may be, just guessing. But this is a very remote area in the state of Texas. If you look at a map down here south of San Angelo, down here in Schleicher County, and when we got out there, it was good land, but it was hard land. A lot of cactus, mesquite. And we got to working out there at that ranch. Just want to show you a few things that we were able to do out there. We were able to build warehouse buildings. Buildings to store our goods, because as you all may know, we live as a community. We share the fruits of our labors. And so we have buildings that we built to be able to allow us to do the work that we were doing and to sustain our people who are living out there at the ranch. Grain silos. Large commissary where folks who were living out there could go to get the things that they needed. And then we set to building houses, and this is part of my work. I've done a lot of this kind of work, but we built houses for not only for ourselves, but for the families that we understood would be called upon and elected to live at this place of refuge. And then finally, we were called upon to build at this place holy buildings that were built for us to be able to practice our faith. We had always been told as a people that just as the church that had abandoned this basic fundamental principle of our religion had its temple in Salt Lake City, that one day the faithful people, the people of our community, would one day have our own temple. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to work on the construction of this building, came to be known as the Temple Annex, and then the temple. We worked hard. We worked day and night, my boy working alongside me, and we worked hard to build up Zion on earth. As we built this community, given the way that we live, the faith that we hold, the way that we were taught, we always understood that maybe the outside world didn't agree with our views, didn't agree with the way that we lived our lives. And we were taught that at some point in time, just as happened in Arizona back in 1953, that there might come a time when the government might come calling and try to interfere with our ability to live the life that we were trying to live. And so, for example, just to show you another one of the revelations that the prophet had, he talked to us about the Lord wants me to give this warning that we must now do or be damned. He will bless us to succeed if we do it His way. But if we return to the loss of the Spirit of God and invite the evil powers among us and within us, He will have to now execute an eternal judgment on any one of us if we do not live as we have been taught and as we have been covenanted to live. The entire priesthood people could be afflicted if we did not succeed in the mission that we had been called upon to do at the R-17 ranch in Texas. And He told us, the Lord will allow the government pressures to come upon us greater now. He has shown me that wicked people will try to come on this land and just see what is here. It will take great faith to keep the enemy away and for us to survive. We will go through afflictions and tests, but we are under covenant to keep Zion growing. We have chosen to stay, and the Lord promises us the advantage, the gifts of success, His Spirit increasing in us as we reach, receive, and exert the heavenly gifts to do His will. The prophet was right. Because in April of 2008, what the prophet had told us would happen, happened. Armed officers, semi-automatic weapons, battle gear, stormed into our community. They brought an armored vehicle with them. Snipers. They went into our homes. They took our children. They took our family photographs. They took everything that we hold dear. Good morning. I am a Texas Ranger. I'm assigned a territory out in central West Texas that includes a county known as Schleicher County. It's a very remote county, of a county that's got a lot of acreage, a lot of miles. It's got a total population, or at least had back in 2008, about 2,900 people. So it's a very, very remote area. And I actually cover a territory that's got 5 counties in it. And you can kind of see a map out here. So I cover Schleicher, parts of Menard County, Arion County, Crockett, Concho, a big territory. And what happened in late 2003 and early 2004 is that I, along with other law enforcement officers, got word that there was some construction going out in a ranch that was out there in Schleicher County that was previously used as a hunting camp, and which we understood had been bought in late 2003 by some folks who were coming in saying they were going to improve and really build a deer hunting camp out there. And you know how crazy everybody is about deer hunting out in that part of the state or across the state. But then we got word that there was a lot of construction going on out there at all times of the day and night. And so we came to understand that the folks who were out there had come from an area they call Short Creek along the Utah-Arizona border, and that they were building a number of buildings out there. And we learned a little bit more about this group and what they believe in. And so first the local sheriff obviously introduced himself to them to kind of let them know who he was. And then later I had the opportunity to go out there to the ranch gate and meet some of the representatives of the ranch. And I actually brought with me a copy of the Texas Penal Code. That's our laws. The criminal laws are all collected in a book that's called the Texas Penal Code. And I gave them the book, and I even flagged for them the pages dealing with Texas laws on bigamy and the Texas laws dealing with sexual assault of children. And I left with that with them. We did not really go on the ranch. But I was able to at least observe certain things out at the ranch. I saw some of the things that they were building. So let me point out a few of those for you real quick that I saw. So if I pull back off this, kind of give you a little orientation. I'm going to do this perimeter thing here. And so this road that you see running kind of across the bottom here, that's a county road, very rural road, County Road 300. It runs, if you take the road back over this direction, you run into the town of El Dorado, which if any of you have ever been there, it's basically a one stoplight town. Also got a flashing light. And so when I first went out there, so you'd go out to County Road 300, and you would see this location right here that I'll pull up for you. And you see that this was what we saw right here, which is a set of metal gates with a chain across, locked. These were always maintained in a locked position. When we would come out to the ranch to do the visits I talked about, we would never really get beyond this point right here. We would just visit with the people from the ranch, the representatives right here at the gate. This is where I gave the guy the Texas Penal Code. And but in the background, of course, as you see in this picture, you could see things that were being built. And one of the things that the first thing that you came to when you went up that road from that lock gate up towards where all these buildings were, you saw this structure wasn't there at the time I was out there earlier. It was under construction later. This was taken in April of 2008. But there was this building here that I could tell even back then was being used as a guardhouse. And so, these folks kept to themselves. And in our country, there's nothing wrong with that. But there was really no way for us to know exactly what was going on out there. Well, then we need to flash forward to late March of 2008. I need to talk to you about what happened then. And I don't know if we put this as part of your materials that you have, but I'm going to put it up here on the screen. So in late March of 2008, there were numerous calls made to a family shelter out in San Angelo, the New Bridge Family Shelter. And those calls were made by a person who identified herself as Sarah Jessup Barlow. And she called that family shelter 3 times on one day alone. That's March 29th of 2008. And on that day, in those 3 calls, the shelter volunteers spent 2 hours with her on the phone. The next day, she called the family shelter 2 more times. And during these 5 calls, she told the family shelter workers some of this material. I haven't put it all up here, but some of this told them that she'd been at the ranch since 2005, that she was 16 years old, that she had an 8-month-old child, that she was currently pregnant, that she had 12 sister wives living in the same house with her. She told the family shelter workers in terms that are pretty graphic, I haven't put all that on here, but that her husband was physically abusing her, that he would hit and hurt her, that she wanted to leave the ranch. She couldn't because she was under guard, and that she worried that if she tried to leave, she would be locked up. Now, in the state of Texas, when a family shelter receives this kind of information, they really report it to 2 different types of authorities. They report it to law enforcement, and they also report it to the Department of Family and Protective Services, or CPS. And so on the next day, the materials, their call notes, they would write notes about the conversations with her, and they sent those call notes over to law enforcement and to the Department of Family and Protective Services. And so as a law enforcement officer receiving this type of information, I did what is commonly done in the state of Texas, which is to prepare and bring to a judge to be executed what's called a search warrant. And so I prepared an affidavit for an arrest warrant. I took that form to, in the state of Texas, you take it to what's called a magistrate, but that includes a district judge in the state of Texas. So I took that and I put the information that had been received from the calls to the family shelter, as well as my own observations of the ranch that I was just telling you about. I put all that in the form of an affidavit, took it to a judge, and a judge issued a warrant, and the warrant called upon us to go search for this person who identified herself as Sarah Jessup, her alleged assailant, or the alleged perpetrator, which was Dale Barlow. That's the husband that the caller indicated was hitting and hurting her, and any information concerning Sarah Jessup or Dale Barlow. And so other law enforcement officers took that warrant out to the ranch. They went to that ranch gate that we talked about. They met the representative of the ranch out there at the gate, and after many hours of negotiation, entered the ranch pursuant to that search warrant, and went to a location. First, I got to tell you, it was dark. It was late at night, and for those of you who've been out in those rural areas like that, you don't have any street lights, nothing. It was dark, and so we went in to the ranch, and we eventually went to a building that was a school building. And the purpose of going to the school building was we talked to the people at the ranch, and we talked about the fact that it was late at night, that we were not. It may not be necessary for us to go house to house in the middle of the night, waking people up. That if we go to the schoolhouse and allow the DFPS officials who had their own order. They had what's called an order in aid of investigation. Take their order, go to the schoolhouse, and start conducting interviews of persons who lived at the ranch who might have knowledge about this victim that was calling in to the family shelter, that might be a reasonable approach. And so that started. That started in the night of April the 3rd, going over into the morning of April the 4th. And so girls who were living at the ranch were brought over, interviews with the CPS caseworkers were conducted, and as a result of those interviews, and as a result of just our observations as law enforcement officers being out there at the ranch, what do you think we saw and heard? We heard about multiple instances of young girls having been what they call placed with older men in what they called celestial or spiritual marriages. We saw girls who were young, who appeared to be pregnant. We got reported back to us, to the CPS caseworkers, that various girls, despite sometimes not wanting to answer questions, that there were still some girls who gave indications about people in their household who had been placed with older men, about some of their siblings that had had children at a young age. And as a result of that, what we did was we went back to court and we got a second search warrant to do a broader search of the ranch. And this time, instead of just looking for Sarah Barlow, we were looking for records or other information relating to the birth of a child or children to a mother who was a child under the age of 17. That's part of our law, by the way, in case you didn't know. The standard, the baseline sexual assault of a child statute defines child as a person being under the age of 17 who is not the spouse of the actor, which is something we'll talk about in just a minute. And so we went back to court, we got the second search warrant, and as we went out and executed that second search warrant, what did we end up seeing? We ended up coming into areas of the ranch, and this picture that was taken, this is a resident of the ranch who was actually photographing us as we were doing our search. But we came into areas where you saw these big concrete walls with these steel doors. And behind these concrete walls and steel doors were two buildings that we eventually got to. And show you a couple of pictures. This is what we found in the basement of that building that you may have seen earlier, that called the Temple Annex. And so what we found when we got on the first floor of this building, the Temple Annex, is we saw a vault that looks pretty much like a vault that you'd see in a bank. And we, of course, asked the persons who were living at the ranch, the people we understood to be in charge of the ranch, if they would go ahead and open that vault for us voluntarily. I mean, we're still looking for this Sarah Jessup Barlow at this point in time, and we don't know where someone may have put her. So, when that didn't work, we ended up having to have jackhammers brought in, and I'll show you that over here is where they first tried to make their entry. They found that around this whole vault was about 1.5 feet of reinforced concrete. And so they finally found a spot that didn't have, that could actually be cut out, and this little area was an area in which we had to call in one of, how should I put it kindly, one of our more diminutive law enforcement officers. Okay? One of our rangers who has taken an appropriate amount of grief, for having this distinction, but he was able to fit in that hole. And when he went in that hole, there were no lights on in that vault. It was dark. Had no idea what he was getting into. So he stripped off his body armor, took his pistol, took a flashlight, went in that area, cleared it, and then was ultimately able to open that door with some assistance. So once we got in, what did we find? We found records, lots of records. Oh, and this is the outside of the building, by the way. Kind of the inscription that appears over every doorway, holiness to the Lord. And then what we found was boxes and boxes of records, the church archives. Now, I had always heard, or I'd